forgave him miraculously, magnificently. And see, he wants to do the same for us this morning. Failure is overcome by forgiveness. There's no other way. If you want to make a difference in people's lives, you've got to learn that. Sometimes the way to overcome our failures, we try to by being better or being better the next time. That's a dead-end road. No, it's always overcome by the forgiveness of Jesus. I think Jesus gave Peter 3 chances to declare his love for him because he wanted him to take his forgiveness into his heart where it really mattered. It's one thing to know about the forgiveness of Christ. It's another thing to take it to heart. There's many of you this morning, if the truth were known, you know about the forgiveness of Christ. You know that. You know that he died on the cross. And you know he was willing to forgive every sin in your life. You even know that when you ask him into your life, he promised to forgive every sin. You know that. But when it comes to the worst sin in your life, the truth is, you've never taken that to heart yet. You've never heard Jesus say, I forgive you in that area. Maybe that's the reason God brought you here this morning, to hear him say that. Well, look at Peter, who failed so miserably. See that Jesus took special time to make sure that Peter got it into his heart. The fact, Peter, you're forgiven. If you want to take it to heart, the forgiveness of Jesus, you have to do it the same way Peter did. You look at his word, and you let his word come into your heart, and you know that his forgiveness is real in relationship, and it's genuine, it's lasting. You take it to heart. And then thirdly, you believe. You believe that he can, and he will, and wants to use you to make a real difference in other people's lives. Some of you are sitting here and you think, I can never be used in other people's lives. That's not true. Shepherds make a great difference in the lives of sheep, don't they? And Jesus was saying, feed my sheep. Shepherds keep sheep alive. They show them where the water is. They show them where the grass is. God put you and me on this earth to make a difference in other people's lives. I don't know whose life that is, but I know whatever's going on in your life, if you would take the focus off of your circumstances, off of your feelings, and put your focus on making a difference in someone else's life, your whole life would change. God put you on this earth to make a difference in someone else's life. In fact, you may be an example to someone you don't even see it. Peter was many times, feed my sheep, Jesus said, because you love me. Make a difference in other people's life. Now, there's something interesting about this exchange between Jesus and Peter. Do you love me? Yes, I love you. Do you love me? Yes, I love you. In the original language, there are 2 different words for love that are used there. One is the word agape, which means God's kind of love, that unconditional, perfect kind of love. The other is the word phileo. It's where we get the name of the city, Philadelphia. It's the city of brotherly love. It's the brotherly kind of love. In this passage, this is how it goes. Jesus looks at Peter and says, Peter, do you agape me? And Peter says, Lord, you know I phileo you. Second time, Jesus says, Peter, do you agape me? And Peter says, Lord, I phileo you. The third time Jesus asked him, he said, Peter, do you phileo love me? And Peter says, yes, I have phileo love for you. The word agape and phileo are used somewhat interchangeably in the Gospel of John. Now, we shouldn't miss the point either, because there's a reason that exchange happened in this way. I think it's very interesting that Jesus the third time said, Peter, I'm going to come down where you are. I'm going to start where you are, and I'm going to let you grow in your love. There's probably not one of us in this room that feels like we love Jesus like we ought. I hope that most of us feel like we want to love him like we should. Jesus said, do you love him with everything you have, every moment, Peter? And if we were honest, we'd most of the time say, Lord, I'm trying to love you like that. That's sort of what Peter did. So Jesus came the third time and says, Peter, are you giving your all, trying to grow in your love for me? That's what he does for you and me. He takes us where we are, And he helps us grow in our love that we have for him. Then comes the third command. The first one, cast your net on the other side. The second one, feed my sheep. Now the third command, it's a command that in the first command it was the first command in many of the lives of the disciples. This is how they met Jesus. And it's a simple command, follow me. Now, isn't it interesting when you read the Gospel of John, it all comes around to the same thing at the end. In the lives of these disciples, Jesus had come to them several years ago, 3 years ago, and says, follow me, I'll make you fishers of men. Then he comes to these fishers of men at the end, and he looks at them again one more time and says to Peter, follow me. And in this command, we learn something very interesting about what can turn followers into failures. You see, Peter asked two questions. One was implied, and one was a real question. And they will inevitably turn me or you into a failure as a follower of Jesus. First question is this: why me? Why me? Why did this happen to me? Why did I have to go through that? Why didn't you stop that? Anytime you start to ask the why me question, you're on the wrong track. Second question: what about him? These two questions will kill you every time. Why me? And why is this happening to me? How could God let this happen? Have you noticed how quickly why me turns into poor me? It's so quick you can't even see it sometimes. All of a sudden, pity is the result, and pity is the number one enemy of purpose in our lives. People who pity themselves, they don't have any purpose in their life. Why? Because if you're using all your energy on self-pity, you don't have any energy left for real purpose in your life. The great thing about this chapter is Jesus answered the why me question even before Peter asked it. He knew he was going to face it in his life, so he told him about the difficulties that he was going to face in advance. Can God's purpose include difficulty? It certainly can. It certainly will. But I would rather have difficulty in my life than ineffectiveness in my life. Wouldn't you? It's one or the other. Difficulty is always a part of God's purpose in our lives. It's the story of every saint. Well, Jesus helped Peter with the why question when he said in verse 18, he says, I'm going to tell you why, Peter. He says, when you were younger, you dressed yourself. And you went where you wanted to go. And when you are old, you stretch out your hands and someone else will dress you and they'll lead you to where you don't want to go. And he said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would die to glorify God in verse 19. And then he said to him, follow me. This is a really challenge. Jesus said, Peter, by the way, you're going to face some real tough times in this. And you're going to be crucified like I was crucified, Peter. Stretch out your hands. But by the way, follow me. It's one thing for Jesus to say, follow me into joy and goodness when everything's going to be great. It's another thing for him to look at Peter and say, follow me, Peter. There's a crucifixion in the future. Why me? Jesus let Peter know that sometimes those who are most effectively used by God face some of the most devastating circumstances. I tell you the truth, he said, you're going to die to glorify God just like I did, Peter. Follow me. That leads to the second question from Peter. He knew he couldn't ask why me. Jesus had already answered that question before he got it out of his mouth. So he looks over his shoulder and he sees in verse 21 the disciple whom Jesus loved, which was John, of course. He saw John standing there and he says, what about him? Like, I'm going to be crucified, but is something worse going to happen to him? It would make me feel better if something worse was going to happen to him. We've all felt that way. Jesus said in verse 22, if I will that he tarry till I come, what is that to thee? Follow thou me. So if I want him to remain alive until I return, Peter, What is that to you? You just follow me, Peter. Then he adds in verse